Welcome back, my lovely citizens, and welcome to Week 2 of the OnGaard Doubles Draft League. This week, I was up against Mabosstiff Punkz, whose team is right above me, right over here. So this was the team that we prepped for, and this was the team that we brought to fight said team here. We started with Iron Valiant, which is obviously the core part of our team. This was our one Paradox Mon that we were able to put on our team, so normally I tend to start out by putting this on the team first. For this specific one, we ran a mixed nature one, running just enough speed to speed creep the base 110 speed Grafai, which was the only thing that could outspeed this other than Dragapult, which we wouldn't outspeed anyway. So we ran a mixed attack one with this, with Life Orb to boost both the physical and the special attack, with maxed out special attack other than the fact that we were naive, so obviously it's not like max where it would be with Modest. And we ran Dazzling Gleam and Psychic, which hits the majority of their team, and then we also ran Shadow Sneak to get some chip damage on Dragapult by having priority, so we outspeed it regardless. We ran Terra Fairy to boost our Dazzling Gleam a little bit further in a pinch, and it's also just a really good type to have against their team, considering they do not have a Steel type on their team. They have Grafai, which is a Poison type, but they've been mainly using it for support, or at least they had in Week 1. So it felt safe to go Terra Fairy with this because it boosts our Dazzling Gleam up with Super Stab. Moving on to Salamence, we had Lumberry Salamence because they've been running some status shenanigans, whether it be like Swagger on the Grafai, Toxic, maybe Will-O-Wisp from something. Generally, the only real weakness to our Salamence in this matchup was that it could be statused, and that was something that I wanted to prevent, so we just threw Lumberry on there. The other consideration was running Clear Amulet, which is what I had at first, but ended up swapping Lumberry later. The reason we're running Moxie over Intimidate is because they both have Mabosstiff on their team, and there was one other thing. Yeah, Defiant Braviary. That's the two reasons that we are running Moxie over Intimidate on this. So we had Tailwind to boost our entire team's speed, Earthquake, which hits a good deal of their team. It hits the Grafai especially well. It can hit the Crocolar. It's not as useful against a lot of other things, but Earthquake is just decent coverage to have. We had Dragon Claw because they had no resistances to it, and both their Tatsugiri and Dragapult were weak to it. And we had Dual Wing Beat, which was super important because they tended to lead Sash, Rage Power, Scovalin, and this automatically KOs that, and would get us a +1 boost at the very start as well. So having Dual Wing Beat on this, I think, was a very key move to have on this. And obviously, I put a lot of prep time into this specific team because we lost Week 1, so I was gunning for a win this week. Moving on to Crocodile, we also made this Moxie, but kept the Clear Amulet on this, because again, they have a lot of Intimidators as well. They had potentially Mabosstiff as an Intimidator, they had Tauros Aqua as an Intimidator, and then obviously they had Wochien, which lowers our attack, but Clear Amulet doesn't prevent that because it doesn't cause a stat drop, it just lowers the attack of everything else on the field. So with that, we had Earthquake, Crunch, Fairy Terra Blast, which hits a lot of their team. The only real resistance is the Grafai and the Crocolar, both of which we hit with Earthquake. So Fairy Terra Blast on Crocodile was my way of getting around that, and it's also just a really good defensive type to have against their team. And then we had 299 speed, which outsped the Braviary and also the Glamora. That was super important. Moving on to the Scizor, we had Akaberry Scizor, which was in case they had any like Terra Fire or just Fire Fang or some sort of fire shenanigans for us to deal with that a little bit easier. And we also had Terra Steel, so even if they hit us for super effective, if we Steel type to Terra, it's not going to be ×4, it's only going to be ×2, so we can make better use of that Akaberry. Then we had Bullet Punch, Close Combat, U-Turn for a pivot, and we had Defog because Glamora is an issue if it sets a lot of hazards in the early game, it can chip down our team over time. So having defog on something I felt was important. So we went 88 speed, which under Tailwind outsped... It didn't outspeed Dragapult, but I think it outsped everything else on their team. So I think that was the main relevancy of having the 88 speed. Was there anything else that it actually necessarily outsped? I think it was just specifically... No. It was to outspeed minimum speed Wo-Chien. Or at least I think it was, because I think Wo-Chien is 75 speed. But I'm pretty sure that was the reason. I think the speed is both to outspeed everything else on their team after Tailwind, and also make sure that we outspeed the Wo-Chien if it's at base speed. Moving on to Rotom Heat, we had Choice Specs Rotom Heat. It was just a straight-up linear, super straightforward set with Terra Electric to remove all weaknesses from this Pokemon. We had it at max speed simply due to the fact that it's speed tied with Glamora, and I'm fine with taking a 50-50 in certain situations. We had Thunderbolt, Overheat, Dark Pulse, and Volt Switch. I considered putting Trick on this over Dark Pulse, but I felt Dark Pulse was just too good to have against Dragapult, and putting a Choice Specs onto a Dragapult is super risky, so we just kept it with 4 attacking moves in the Choice Specs. Then Slowking, which is our Assault Vest Regenerator Pivot. This didn't see a lot of play in our... It didn't see a lot of use in my week 1, because it died on turn 1, but we just need to be more conservative with it now. We have the Terra Dark to both boost our foul play and also make us turn from a weakness to Ghost into a resistance to Ghost as a check to Dragapult. We had Psychic, Icy Wind, Focus Blast for hitting things like the Mabosstiff, Kamala, and Grafaiai. The Icy Wind hits things and slows them down, which is super important, and also hits super effectively on the Dragapult. And the Psychic just hits everything else basically neutrally. It also hits the Glamora very well. So I felt like this was a very good set. We had a good split of defenses and a little bit into offense to benchmark certain attacks. So I believe with the special attack, we were 2-shotting most things with Psychic, or specifically 1-shotting, like, the Kamala with Focus Blast, I think. I can't remember the exact calcs, but it was important. I also think that it also benchmarked the Wo-Chien with Focus Blast, making sure that it 2-hit KOs even with Leftovers Recovery. So this was a super important piece on our team, and I very much like the way that I built it. But let's go ahead and show off the gameplay now. Alright, so this was our team versus their team. They decided to bring Grafaiai, Mabosstiff, Braviary, Kamala, Tatsugiri, and Scovillain. Very interesting that they didn't bring Dragapult here. Honestly, it was the thing that I was most afraid of, as well as the Aqua Tauros. That was also relatively scary, so it was very nice to see that they didn't bring 2 main threats that I was very much expecting. Although, we see how that went for me last week when I expected Goldango, and they didn't bring it and it threw me off. But we'll see if I can get a win this week. So we started with Salamence and Rotom, and they sent out Grafaiai and Scovillain. We expected here that they were going to use Rage Powder with this and try to set up with this, or try and status us with this, to either set it for a Baton Pass or just try to cripple one of my main attackers. So in this case, we decide to dual Wing Beat into the Scovillain, and then Volt Switch into the Grafaiai. This gives us a +1 with Salamence, and also gets us into another attacker that can better deal with the situation. Now that we've pivoted into Scizor here, and they send out Braviary, they now only have Mabosstiff, Kamala, and Tatsugiri to Baton Pass to, potentially, because I highly doubt that Grafaiai is going to be the main attacker to utilize this attack here, although it technically could. They do have normal type moves and they do have Poison Jab, so a Swords Dance could hurt, but it's not going to do enough to KO our Salamence and does basically nothing to our Scizor. So looking at what they have here, we predicted a switch into Kamala. Also, let me shrink my camera here a little bit so you can actually see all 6 of their team. Alright. So we predicted a switch with Baton Pass into Mabosstiff or Kamala, and decided to close combat into this slot. We also Dragon Claw the Braviary here, and simply hope to not flinch. We didn't get flinched, so the close combat connected with the Mabosstiff, taking out the +2 attack before it was able to do anything at all. This puts us in a really good spot, because now we have a +1.5 or +1 Salamence, and we just Lumbaried out of Flatter, which honestly I'm kind of surprised they didn't run Swagger and ran Flatter instead, but maybe they didn't want the chance of making me get too strong and then it not have any effect, so I can see the justification for it. But in this specific circumstance, the Lumberry came in clutch, and we were able to take another KO, putting us up to 2 times attack. And the Bullet Punch onto the Braviary was super important too, because it removed another threat. Now all they have is Kamala and Tatsugiri left, and we have a +2 Salamence that's really hard to deal with. So we just Dragon Claw into the Tatsugiri, close combat the Kamala, and then that's game. If they had... so the main situation that they could have done better here is instead of sending out the Braviary on the turn that they had the Grafai at +2, they should have sent out something else and then Baton Pass to the Braviary instead of to the Mabosstiff. Because the Braviary at least would have lived 1 close combat, whereas the Mabosstiff did not. Also, if the Tatsugiri was sashed, it would have been able to at least take down the Salamence. But because of this specific situation that happened, we were able to take a 6-0 win this week. So, with the 6-0 win that I got over Mabosstiff Punkz this week, these are the Week 2 standings. In first, still remaining, is Chi and Pao's Unified Mexicans, and staying in second, Team Solar Fusion. I got bumped up from 6th to 3rd because of a 6-0 win, boosting me up to 3rd place. Ghost Town is now up to 4th place. Smileback Snacks is at 5th. The Control Group is now at 6th after being in 3rd place previously, so me and them swap places, even though they defeated me last week. 7th is Dumpster Fire, and 8th remains Mabosstiff Punkz. Let's see if anything changes next week then. This has been a lot of fun to run so far, and I'm having an absolute blast being able to play against all of these different teams. It's been super fun to be able to creatively build, and this week having my lots of time of prep pay off was definitely a good feeling. So if you are enjoying watching this series and want to follow along a little bit more in depth, the document will be in the description below. Leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and honestly, if you want to join in a draft league in the future, I will be holding more after this season ends, so join the Discord in the description below as well if you want to hop in for that, and leave a comment below. Algorithm stuff. Hope you all have a lovely rest of your night, and as always, stay on guard.